Okay, again, R225. This is a quick example on using artificial lighting in Revit. So I have this reasonably ugly little example project here that I'm going to use as a base. And what you're going to find in particular with artificial lighting in Revit is that most of the default lights are going to want to stick to either a ceiling or a wall. So we're going to look at two things. First of all, we'll look at lights that attach to walls, lights that attach to ceilings, and then also how to build an arbitrary light. Because a lot of times I find that, especially when you're working in schematic design, you don't really know exactly what your lighting is going to do yet, but we need some basic artificial lighting just to create some placeholders. So let's start by adding in some lighting that attaches to a wall. So I'm going to go Component, and no, we're going to load Family. And I'm going to go to Lighting Fixtures, and I'm going to find a sconce light. Let's just use this sconce light sphere, and I'm going to go ahead and say Open. And you notice this loads into the default components. And one of the things that's a little bit aggravating to me is it loads it with everything. It would be great to have just sort of a lighting panel, especially as these get more complicated. But you'll see that we have basic lights, a few that I've already loaded, but I'm going to start with this 60 watt, 120 volt sconce light sphere. And if you notice, I can't place it anywhere, but I can attach it to a wall. So I'll go ahead and place a few of those along this wall, and then I might go ahead and add a few of those on the columns along the exterior as well. Now if you notice, on that particular light type, if I go to Edit Type, the actual light itself here, let me make sure I have that selected. You'll notice a couple of key elements. Primarily the mounting height is at 6.4. Again, that's something that I can come in and adjust as a default, but when I'm placing those in Plan View, that is going to be the default height. If I go to my section, I'll be able to see those lights at 6.4 above the floor elevation. Okay, so let's go into, and one other quick note. Right now in this file, I do have a few settings with lighting in particular to take a look at. If I look at my Visibility Graphics override, you will see that both lighting fixtures are turned on and the light source is currently turned on. Sometimes those are off by default, in particular the light source. I like being able to have the light source on. That's this yellow piece right here, and I can actually sort of begin to get an idea of how light is emanating from a fixture. So let's add in a ceiling next, so that I can put in a pendant light that's hanging from the ceiling. So I'm going to go to my ceiling plan view, and I'm going to go to Ceilings, and now I should just be able to select inside of my space, and that's going to make an automatic default ceiling type. If I go to my section view, I can actually see the location of that ceiling. The default height was 8 feet, as you can see, and I'm just going to go ahead and move that back up to be just right at the roof height. Because really what I need the ceiling for in this particular case is simply as something that I can attach a light to. So I'm going to go back to my ceiling plan view, and this time I'm going to go Component, Load Family, Lighting Fixtures, and this time I'm going to use a pendant light disc. I'm going to place a few of those fixtures along the interior. So if I look at this now, I'm going to go ahead and place a camera on the interior. And you can see that I have the series of fixtures along the inside. And let's go ahead and do a really fast rendering with those. So I'm going to click on the teapot. I'm going to leave draft on, but this time under my lighting scheme, I'm going to change this to interior artificial only. And if I click on my artificial light setting, I can see my light sources, that they're all checked. If I have a group of lights that I want on or a group of lights I want off, I can start to work through those and turn certain lights on or off. On this particular project, I would not recommend going past, let's say, 10 to 12 lights. The more artificial lights that you have in, you will definitely see a very dramatic impact on your render time. As lighting becomes something very, very difficult for the computer to calculate, it takes up a lot of memory and takes a lot of additional time. So this first pass, again, where render setting is interior artificial only. You can use a setting of artificial and sun. The results of that, in my opinion, are a bit sporadic. You really rarely see the impact of the artificial lighting on something like that. But this is a little bit more that we're after in terms of getting an artificial lighting rendering put together. I'm going to go to the adjust exposure, and now I'm going to make this a little bit brighter. Apply. It's a little bit too bright. And something like that is a good starting point for an artificial rendering. So I want to go ahead and add in a few additional lights now that are not attached to anything. So I'm going to go back to my level 1 plan. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the big R, and I'm going to go New, Family. And I'm going to use a template of a lighting fixture that I'm going to switch my view mode here to a list, and I want lighting fixture. You'll notice there's lighting fixture ceiling based, wall based, or just lighting fixture, and I want that guy right there. And I'm just going to call this, I'm going to go back to the big R, save as, save a family, and I'm just going to write this to my desktop and just call this generic light. Now this will give me a light that I can pretty much position anywhere in the workspace, and think of it as just sort of positioning a 100-watt light bulb anywhere in the 3D space in my project. So I'm going to go ahead and load this into my project, and you notice now I have generic light as a tab, and I can go ahead and start placing this in my scene. I'll put a few along the outside here, and this time I'm going to set up a camera from the outside. And you'll notice we don't see those just yet, so I'm going to look at my visibility graphics override. There's no fixture for those. That is just a light source. So if I come to my lights, I'm going to turn on light source. Okay, and so I can actually see those lights that I placed. And let's do a rendering of this. So again, we're going to set exterior artificial only. I'm going to keep my settings on draft for right now and run the render. So right here, we'll notice I have 17 artificial lights now, which is reasonably hefty in terms of the calculations, but the computer's doing an okay job with that. I'm going to adjust my exposure one more time again, brighten this up just a little bit, and I'm starting to get a decent nighttime render shot of the building.